Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. I would like to ask you to please consider supporting Concussion Talk by going to patreon.com/Concussion Talk or by going to patreon.com and searching Concussion Talk. You can visit my website at www.concussiontalk.com and you can follow Concussion Talk on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Concussion Talk. Thank you. Episode 46 of Concussion Talk Podcast is with ImPACT Applications CEO Michael Wahlster and HeadCheck Health CEO Harrison Brown as they discuss their new partnership with the goal of improving concussion management. Okay, I'm talking now to Harrison Brown, CEO of HeadCheck Health, and Michael Wahlster, CEO of ImPACT Applications. And I will ask them both to let know what. First of all, Michael, I could ask you first because Harrison's been on here a few times. But what is ImPACT Applications? What is your software, your devices? So could you please talk? But why did you choose? Why concussion? Why is concussion such an important topic or an area for your company?
Well, first, thanks for the opportunity to join the podcast, and always enjoy joining Harrison on any effort with concussions, specifically in Canada. ImPACT Applications has been in existence since 2002. We've been at this for quite some time. Over 500 research articles published supporting the reliability, efficacy, sensitivity of our products, and in particular for Canada, all three of our medical devices, ImPACT, ages 12 to 59, ImPACT Pediatric, ages 5 to 11, or ImPACT Quick Test 12 to 70, they are all Class 2 medical devices cleared by Health Canada. We're the only devices in Canada with that designation, and we are specific to concussion.
What does that mean, Class 2?
Class 2 means, unlike a Class 1 clearance, that very little research has to be submitted or shown to the regulatory agency. Class 2 is a much higher level of clearance, and you have to have substantial research, both independent as well as peer-reviewed, to support any of the claims or the indications that you are communicating to the public that your device can be used for. It's a big distinction, but one that's misunderstood by the public, and unfortunately, many of the folks who are on the fringes in this industry or who have come to the table late like to play in the shadows. So they'll make claims about diagnostic accuracy, and it's a public health issue, and that's where we really see Canada kind of moving forward. But we'll get to Canada on public policy and healthcare providers later. But we offer three medical devices; they're all Class 2 in Canada.
Great.
We offer credential programs and world-class support. That's us in a nutshell.
Great. And Harrison, the same question to you. Why concussion? And what is your company? What does HeadCheck Health do exactly?
Yeah, no, I appreciate again coming on the pod, and you know me well, but just for reference for listeners here, HeadCheck is a mobile and web-based platform, and really what it does is it gives organizations the tools they need to follow their protocol. And so this is kind of step 2 of an organization that's concerned about concussion. Step 1 being let's write a policy, or let's get a group that's got medical experts to provide us with one. And then step 2 is bring it to life. And that's really what HeadCheck Health is about. And, part of it is making sure they have the appropriate tools. Another part to it is making sure that the people are doing what's appropriate for their education levels, and people aren't doing stuff that's inappropriate or they're not qualified for. And then the last part to it, which is kind of the sweet spot for us, is providing the administrators. So these are presidents or executive directors or commissioners, even the ability to kind of lift up the hood and monitor the compliance of that organization in real time. And so really what we're trying to do here is make it easier for organizations to do what their policy says they're supposed to do, and then actually give them analytics and an ability to kind of lift up the hood and see, hey, are we actually doing that? And, the reason we chose to get into this market is my background was as a researcher in the area. And, even at the highest level of sport, there really wasn't a tool like this. And obviously the social side to it is, being an athlete myself, and Nick, you as well, and there's so many people in our lives that have been affected by this injury, and a lot of it was just negligence on following best practices and following policies, and we really wanted to make a difference there.
Great. Well, that actually leads well into my next question. So, why did you guys decide to partner up? And well, because who contacted who, and why did you guys decide that hey, ImPACT and HeadCheck should link up and work together on this?
Oh,
sorry.
I actually don't know. To be honest, I actually don't know. Okay, you do. So I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. To Harrison's credit, I mean, a great summary of what, we watched the Canadian market. We were in the Canadian market and been in a long time. And Harrison and what he's doing with his team and his technology is critically important. It's an often overlooked part of the entire public health issue that is concussion. So you can do great testing with medical devices like ours, but if there isn't sufficient record keeping, people don't understand which athletes or students are tested and which are not. There's not proper education. Not only is that a health risk, but it's also a liability risk. So when we saw HeadCheck kind of coming up in the Canadian market, understood the ethos that Harrison just did a great job of explaining. We saw the company as a thought leader. So we, to Harrison's point, I don't know exactly when the conversation started, but we have been looking at HeadCheck Health for some time because we do see them as a thought leader. It's a critical piece of the process. They're doing a great job filling that gap, and we always want to be associated with best in class because we see ourselves that way.
Yeah, and I guess from our perspective, we started operating officially in 2013, and even at that point in time, it was fairly obvious that ImPACT was certainly the leaders in the actual test world. And just for reference, HeadCheck, we are not in that test world. We are in the protocol execution, the compliance world, and that's a very small part of the issue. And the test part of it is a completely separate area. And, rather than, ourselves going and developing new tests or, spending, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it would take to try to recreate the wheel, we want to seek out, best in class and certainly the leaders in the test space and ImPACT. Michael will be able to give you numbers, but I think it's something like 95 computerized neurocog market in the U.S. It was fairly obvious to us that would be, one of the dominoes that really needed to fall for us to be successful. And, as we kind of grew and started working with more and more organizations, there was some of our clients that were already using ImPACT and they kind of wanted to kind of loop the two technologies together. And there was others where, they were saying, hey, we've kind of done the first step, which is implementing HeadCheck. We kind of have the visibility now, and then the testing is pretty light. We'd love to, turn on, a bit more power here and get some better testing methods in. And so that's where, it kind of clicked for us, which was saying, hey, if we could actually offer ImPACT to these organizations and we could have the way that we approach these organizations as a united front, it will kind of dispel these issues that we'd seen in the past where it was, is one test better than the other test? Is HeadCheck a test? Is ImPACT a management system? And so it really tied a bunch of stuff together for us that I think really was necessary. And from my understanding, this relationship, while, we have other partners and ImPACT has other partners as well, this one is really unique. And I think it's because there is such synergy between what we're both trying to accomplish. It's completely different, but together we are much stronger than we are apart.
That's right. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. So that kind of leads me to my next question. Well, Harrison basically explained it, but so say an organization uses HeadCheck Health software, like say Hockey League uses like 10 teams. How would having ImPACT on ImPACT software with HeadCheck? How would that work? How would they use that?
Yeah. So I guess the other thing that's nice about this is our customers and or potential customers here in Canada, they wouldn't have to have relationships with two companies. So what's happened is we've actually become a distributor for the ImPACT tests in both Canada and the US. But for your example here, a hockey team in Canada. So what would happen is we would essentially sign them up as a client. And part of that process is getting information from them as to which tests and kind of which methods are required for their policy. And in that conversation, we might have a talk about ImPACT, and that's where ImPACT is certainly supporting us on making sure that our folks on our side understand exactly the claims that the Class 2 allows them to make, and communicating that clearly to the clients. And if they decide that they want to add ImPACT, what's going to happen is our service people will actually set up the testing for them. And so as part of their process, they're going to be doing the traditional stuff that they would in HeadCheck, which is, collecting basic information. If there was, other tests that were necessary, they would perform those. And then when we get to the ImPACT portion of it, we would actually be able to provide them with the unique codes that they need to make sure they're doing the right test, obviously. And then once that test is done, or once the injury's occurred and they've done a post-injury test, the link to those results will actually be saved in their HeadCheck profile. And so the idea there is you don't have to have stuff in two different places, and that data will follow the athletes. And so if the athletes get traded, sometimes there might be confusion as to, who's getting access and, who's granted consent to actually view that stuff. And that's really where HeadCheck's bread and butter is. And we go to extreme lengths to make sure that we're doing that properly. But the point of it there is that you're getting one relationship, and it's a great relationship with two different systems and two different companies. And it's going to be a really streamlined experience for that client. And I think what we're going to see, hopefully, is more people obviously adopting ImPACT here in Canada. And I think we would love to see in the future a large portion, if not all, of our clients on that test as well.
Great. Okay. Michael, I was trying to ask you about the ImPACT applications, the devices and the software. So could you explain what the difference is between ImPACT and ImPACT Pediatric and ImPACT Quick Test? What are those in particular? How are they different? How do they differ for the layperson?
Yeah, at a high level, ImPACT Quick Test is a remove from activity screening device that it's administered point of injury. So this would be on the sideline at the workplace. It's a 5 to 7 minute iPad-based screening device. Again, Class 2 device in Canada through Health Canada. ImPACT and ImPACT Pediatric are both management devices, so assessment and management. So both run on a baseline post-injury model. Optimally, the patient subject has a baseline on file, a recent one, and then we can administer the post-injury test and compare the patient to the patient, as well as rely on our normative data. However, in both cases with ImPACT and ImPACT Pediatric, baseline test is not required. It's optimal, but is not required. And we can run that post-injury test for a patient who doesn't have a baseline against our normative data. It's really one of the powerful parts of our testing, and still be able to manage and assess that patient relying on our normative data.
Okay, well, thanks. So all three of these devices and software are available via HeadCheck in Canada and wherever else in the states that uses HeadCheck Health.
That's right.
Yes. So it's both Canada and the US. Obviously being a Canadian company, most of our clients to date are in Canada. But certainly this is something where for us, we wanted to make sure that when we were having these initial conversations, our agreement would allow us to do both Canada and the US. And then the reason being is we're planning for success here. And, we're expecting that we're going to bring a lot of volume into Canada. And as HeadCheck itself, begins to ramp up in the United States, we wanted to make sure that we're able to produce that united front in the US as well.
And that actually leads me to another one of my. This is more of my policy wonk hats, I guess, because I used to work for government a lot. And so how does it work for both Michael and Pearson? Have you found difficulty working with the Canadian government and the U.S. government, like the different policies and different? I know you have by that laugh 6 times you have had problems with it, but do you ever find a trick, or you find it more like easier than you thought it'd be, or to work with both laws?
The big difference, the medical device regulation is very similar in the two countries. Both are difficult process if you're going class 2.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of difference there. There are significant differences, though, in terms of where concussion legislation is between the two countries. So the United States takes the state-by-state view. So every one of our 50 individual states has concussion legislation of some kind. Some of it's very specific to return to play. Some of it is very specific as to which healthcare providers can actually do these kinds of things and which can't. And it varies widely among the 50 states. Canada, is making great progress. It looks like where the United States was 6-7 years ago in terms of the awareness is increasing rapidly, to Harrison's point. Some of the provinces are actually looking at legislation. Rowan's Law has been passed. It's more of a aspirational law. There's no funding behind it. There's no mandates behind it, but it's a good step in raising awareness and making this a public health issue in Canada. So when we talk to Canadian provinces or the federal government, they're not quite as evolved or understanding the issue as much as the U.S. definitely is the most sensitive country in the world when it comes to concussion. Canada's getting there, though, and I would say, a close second to the U.S. in terms of awareness. Legislation is starting to come online. Healthcare providers are having the arguments with each other in Canada that we saw healthcare providers having in the U.S. 6 or 7 years ago. Turf wars. I know this better than you. We're the only profession that can really manage a concussion. You shouldn't have anything to do with it. That's going on in Canada right now, and it's a very familiar. We've seen this movie before in the U.S., so it's interesting to watch it play out in Canada once again.
Right.
Yeah, and I would just echo those comments. Just to point out, yesterday we had our first Rowan's Law Day here in Canada, which obviously is legislation for the Ontario government, but we do celebrate it across the country, and part of that is because we don't have an overarching law that covers all the provinces, and we don't have here in BC where HeadCheck is based, we don't have a law here in BC, and so. I think over time, Canada will adopt something that covers all the provinces. And, it's tough for me because I consider, myself to be, somebody that wants to, really just have an impact and make a change and, disrupt. And when I look at these laws, sometimes they're just, there's not much teeth to it. And I think it's a great step that Canada is taking to have, obviously Rowan's Law, and I think the work that's been done is absolutely amazing. But I'm almost kind of chomping at the bit here to say, well, what's next? What's going to happen next? And I think from our perspective as HeadCheck, it's great that we're mandating education, for everybody involved in sport. It's great that we're requiring them to, recognize the signs and symptoms. But it really doesn't, change what HeadCheck is trying to do. And what we're trying to do is, hey, if you have that education and you have that policy, it doesn't matter if you don't follow it. And that's really the entire reason that our company exists, is the fact that people had policies and they didn't follow them and people got hurt. And down in the United States, after people got hurt, they started suing other people. And that's kind of when people started to take issue of it. And even Rowan's Law, it was named after a rugby player who unfortunately passed away. And part of it was because, people didn't recognize the signs and symptoms. And, I think for us, it's kind of, what's next? And so we look down at the United States and we say, we don't want to wait 6 years to get to the point where following policies is what's happening. We want to do it in 1 year. We want to do it in 2 years. And so I think I really do hope that the Canadian government and certainly the provincial governments as well, and the sports organizations are trying to innovate at the speed that HeadCheck wants to go, where we're not waiting 6 years to get to where the US is. We're doing it quicker. And that's something that I think we champion internally. And, any way that we can help, and whether it's going on podcasts with you, Nick, or, press releases, whatever it is, we want to have a role in this. And I think it's going to take a lot of noise and a lot of disruption to make it happen, because right now, unfortunately, it's taken somebody to pass away. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. I don't want to have a law in every province named after somebody who's passed away. I think that would be a huge failure on as Canadians and as people that love sports and truly want them to continue. That would be a complete failure, I think, if we had all of our provinces named after a kid that passed away. That's horrible.
That's so very true. And another reason when we looked at HeadCheck Health, I mean, just to compliment that company and their leadership, the primary guy on the phone or the podcast right now, in an area where the regulation is lacking, there's healthcare providers fighting with each other, there's a lot of rhetoric around concussion. Here's a company that actually, just exactly what Harrison just said, the underlying need is to educate, document, make sure people are getting to care with accurate and reliable data. So there's rhetoric and then there's research, right? And everyone can argue about who should be managing these injuries, what kind of legislation should be in place, everything else. But you can't argue with education is critical, proper patient care is critical, and proper data to manage those patients is critical. And you need devices that are proven, and in our case, government approved, to do that properly and are backed by research. So, Canada's going to get there. I mean, they're definitely going to get there. The awareness is increasing, month by month. Yeah. But that's what impressed us so much about HeadCheck was, these are guys in an area that they don't need to do this. They saw the need. They saw the public health issue. They're doing it for the right reasons, which is why we've always done what we've done. We actually will go and ask for rules, so we're playing by the rules while we have computers out, doing other things. And we got the same feel from HeadCheck that they're going to do it right instead of doing it quick or halfway, and even worse, putting people at risk. So, it's another reason for the partnership.
Actually, one of the things that I found remarkable about both the companies is that your reliance on research and long and just not a gimmicky, short little, we'll fix your problems right away, but research and using science and looking at the actual facts and going by that as a guide to what you do. And actually, finally, to Michael, I just asked you, I was brain injured in 2003, and you said that ImPACT has been on the go since 2002. So, what have you noticed about how the difference in concussion and brain injury awareness, and just brain injury awareness and treatment has changed in these past 17, 18 years, and also. Or it was 16 years, 16 to 17 years, and so what could you tell Harrison about how he may expect things to change?
Well, there's really, and it's a great question, and wish we could have helped you in your experience, because things were very different back in 2003 when you were injured. On the clinical research side, concussion was approached in a very different way than it is today. I mean, even as recently as a couple days ago, research published that women and girls, and we knew this, but research is actually starting to back this up from clinical observation. There's actual research around it. Women and girls are different. Every person's different with concussion, lots of different symptoms, but we're starting to understand differences within separate cohorts. Women are different. Girls are different types of activities. The big difference, on the treatment side, among others, is, rest used to be, out of the gate, that's what you do, right? You go home, you lay down, you don't do anything for quite some time, and, hopefully over time you start to feel better. That's the way the injury, and I'm talking about general changes. That's the way the injury used to be managed. Now it's a very different process, right? It's gradual exertion over time. Lots of research, particularly at the University of Buffalo, about that. And so we're thinking about rehabilitation differently, and of course our products are right in the middle of that. We're the cornerstone of that management to return to life. That's what we like to say. It's not just return to play. It's not return to school. It's all of those things. It's return to life.
Right.
So we're in the middle of all of that, and we're seeing clinicians use our devices in different ways and paired with different modalities. And Harrison mentioned, other tests before. We're firm believers in a multidisciplinary approach, and that's another change, Nick, to your point. Vestibular and ocular are important measures. These are things that should be used. We support that. We believe we're the center of the management, but vestibular and ocular are important, and we've embedded BESS and BOMs into some of our products because we do believe in that. On the legislative side, we just covered that, but the big change from 03 to current day is happening at the school parent healthcare provider side, where this is no longer, you don't have someone walking into an emergency room with a motor vehicle accident and leaving not being screened for concussion, hopefully. The awareness is there, the understanding that the injury impacts not only, the immediate short term, but could have an impact on your ability to return to work, return to school, return to life. Those are huge changes, but the research continues. We follow that and update our customers on it quarterly. You can go to concussionresearch.com and search all the research on concussion that we make available, and we update on a regular basis, and we put out a quarterly report for this exact reason. People need to know where the research is going. Because we still run into people who, my doctor told me to sit in a room for 2 weeks, dark room, lay down.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and that's
don't do it.
Well, to Harrison's point, it's about education, right?
Yeah.
Much of this can be managed and solved through good education. And that's key.
Right. Well, actually, great. So is there anything else either Harrison or Michael you would like to talk about before at the end of this podcast? Is very enlightening. Anything else you'd like to where can people find you, Michael, ImPACT applications, and find information they want to know about ImPACT applications?
Sure. ImpactTest.com is our main website. You can get to many of our other materials, including concussionresearch.com through ImpactTest.com. We're easily found on social media, cross platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Just type in ImPACT applications and up we come.
Great. And Harrison, same question. Anything else you would like to discuss, or do you have any? Where can people find HeadCheck and HeadCheck services?
Sure. So HeadCheck can be found on our website, so headcheckhealth.com. If you go on there and click login at the top right, so you can actually create a free account. We do offer free accounts with limited functionality for anybody to use. And also, if you go to the App Store and you just search for HeadCheck Health, you can actually find our app there, and you can go in that way. And that just kind of showcases that it's both a web and app-based product. And the web obviously has different functionality and different features, and it's for different people. And certainly just reach out to us on our website. There's a little chat blurb at the bottom there, and an email address that you can email or a phone number.
Okay, well, thank you both very much, Michael Wahlster and Harrison Brown. Thank you so much for being part of this podcast, and I think a lot of people will now know more about this new partnership, and more hopefully about both HeadCheck Health and ImPACT applications, or even my podcast. So thank you so much, and anyone else who is physiotherapists or anybody who's going to be in Vancouver next week on October 4th and 5th, I'll be there with Harrison at the HeadCheck Health booth at the third World Congress of Sports Physical Therapy in Vancouver. At where is it? Where is it now? Is that the BCE Center? Or?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so It's at the Vancouver Convention Center, which is right downtown. It's the beautiful building where all the float planes kind of land right in front of it.
Well, perfect. Okay, well, I will be there as well. Harrison or Bill from HeadCheck Health will be there, and I'll be doing some podcast questions. I just iron out what questions I'll do. A few short podcast questions, so anybody who wants to come by the booth and check out HeadCheck software platform, and I will also be asking anybody who wants to be on the podcast just a few simple questions about concussion awareness management, and if you're a physio or a doctor or whoever else, a researcher, and if you come by, it'd be great to have you there. So please stop by, and thank you so much for listening to everybody.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks,
Nick. Appreciate it.
Thank you. As always, music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound, www.bensound.com.